Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Matt from BioWare Follower and today I'm going to be discussing about the bosses of Andromeda and whether I feel the Archon made a good antagonist to the game. I will also discuss the Kett in general, seeing as they were the overall enemy faction. So be aware of many spoilers appearing in this video from any of the Mass Effect games, and also the fact that this is an opinion video, using both mine and trying to incorporate the community views. And also just one little thing, for those who protect and enjoy Andromeda, don't worry, I enjoyed it too. But discussing something doesn't mean I necessarily hate the game, so bearing that in mind, let's commence. So I briefly touched upon boss battles in Andromeda in my top 5 minor improvement ideas not so long ago, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here. In the past, we have had some antagonists in the forms of Sovereign, Sauron, the Collector General, Harbinger, Kai Leng, and the Elusive Man. And from the early trailers, we were presented with the appearance of the new antagonist, the Archon. The Archon. To me, a boss is like a symbol of a game completion. More often than not, by beating the boss, you beat the game. Therefore, he or she is often the last obstacle thrown at you. A good villain should either be someone petrifying with cruel intentions, or is a character hated by the player. This was excellently done in Mass Effect 3 in the form of Kai Leng. Players hated him for killing off one of the most loved squadmates from Mass Effect 2, Thane Krios. And although sad at first, this is what is needed in villains. You want to be able to swear revenge on them for their actions. If the boss presents no real challenge, danger, or interaction in the story, then there's no point in them really ever existing. So I want to talk about reasons why the Archon may or may not be an example where he is kind of unnecessary. And to do that, I'm going to focus on the appearance, voice, interaction with the player, and their importance to the story. Now personally, I believe the Archon looked amazing. He was reasonably intimidating, had a fitting villainous voice, and had his swanky cape. This may be a bit too stereotypical of villains and boring for some, but I personally would accept that any day over some squeaky voiced short alien with nothing more terrifying than having to hear him speak again. So for that criteria, I believe the Archon arguably ticks the box. Now I briefly want to cover one of the reasons the Archon was lacking as an antagonist, and that was the amount of time the Archon was present for in the game. Now the Kett were everywhere in Andromeda, and that's understandable, but the Archon specifically must have been busy with chores throughout most of the game. Now he obviously does appear now and again, but it's possible that due to the insane number of side missions and length of Andromeda, the small number of appearances the Archon makes is drowned out, making it easy to forget he is the apparent big bad guy of the game who you are rivaling for Meridian and for survival in the new galaxy. However, admittedly, the villains in the former games didn't appear too frequently either. So let's also mention the tension between the antagonist and the protagonist across the franchise. Shepard always knew the huge impacts his antagonist had on the galaxy. I mean, the Reapers would have straight up killed almost every living thing in the Milky Way, and even though the Kett share a lot of similarities with the Reapers, the impact doesn't seem to be there with Ryder, and I believe this is personally because the primary goal of the initiative and Ryder's job as a Pathfinder is to make Helios livable and to explore. Also going back to my earlier point of the extreme number of side quests to make the game longer, and this adds to the imbalance of exploration quests to Kett related antagonistic quests. Obviously taking out the Kett makes the X-Golden worlds more viable, but whereas in the trilogy games the main goal is to stop Sauron, stop Sovereign, to stop the Collectors, or to stop the Reapers, the primary goal to the initiative is to explore. And it's only because Ryder believes it's important does he later make it the primary goal to stop the Archon later in the game. Do you kinda see where I'm coming from with this? So the Archon appeared in person on the Solarian Arc mission and the final mission, as well as on the screen a few times. Now mentioning the Archon's taunts as well as a factor to being a good villain, which is linked into I guess his voice acting and writing. It may not be the most important trait to an antagonist, but it does play a part in how they are portrayed. The Archon had some decent lines to badmouth Ryder, or boast about a victory, and that's something I appreciate. And in that sense, he wasn't as bad as Harbinger either, who wouldn't shut up in Mass Effect 2 after assuming direct control of a collector.
Enemy!
If I must tear you apart, Shepard, I will. This is true power. The forces of the universe bend to me. Our power is unmatched.
Now the Archon didn't betray the Senate, but did get sidetracked from his main goal of having to exalt the cluster. This is different from antagonists we have seen in previous games, who appear devoted to one cause and will stop at nothing to watch that succeed. The endgame scenes of Andromeda result in the Primus, the Archon's second in command, observing the Archon's failure and storming out of camera view, presumably having the goal to inherit the Archon's position to continue exalting the cluster. And if a future title is released, we will have to see whether she can step up to the task of being another key villain. So now let's move on to the second part of this video topic agenda, boss battles. Now people will view boss battles differently. For example, some may see the Exalted Krogan or the Ascendant classes of Kett as a boss battle, but in my view Andromeda has only two, of which being the Archon Sword and the Architect battles. Now you could count all the notable Kett Ascendants as boss battles like the Prefect, Invictor, Valiant and Cardinal. However, these are essentially just standard Kett Ascendant fights with no deviations, hence they kinda lack the same impact as a boss, although technically they kind of are because they're notable Kett that you've got to take down anyway. Now I personally enjoy boss battles as it's a way to directly take revenge on the antagonist you are facing, and it doesn't bother me if it's not a one-on-one fight, as proven to me by the Archon Sword battle. So even though this opinion will be different from many others, I was slightly disappointed that we could not directly fight the Archon, as his boss battle whittled down to just fighting Remnant with the Archon out of the picture, and some architect just firing randomly at you. Now I don't agree that boss fights are always necessary, but if there is a main antagonist present in the game, it feels slightly odd not to include one anyway. Seeing the Archon drop dead due to pulling the power of Meridian from under him did feel relatively satisfying, but not as much as watching him eat bullets and cutting him off mid-sentence from taunting you again with insults. So again, that's not really that big of a deal, and the ending was pretty good as it was, but if the Archon was going to end up dead anyway, in a game that didn't have many unique boss battles, then adding one in to finish off the game would have been perfect in my view. And the last thing I want to briefly discuss is my overall viewpoint on the Kett in general. Now usually antagonists are ugly as hell, and the Kett suffer from this trope also. However, as opposed to being the main enemy of the game, which they were in this case, to me they felt more like just shooting Vulture. Now I don't necessarily know what to say in how this could have been improved, but possibly again more of an interaction with their faction leaders may have helped, seeing as Shepard had this with some of his antagonists and the Vulture never really had this. So taking everything into account, I personally have a final conclusion that the Archon had potential to be a great antagonist, but was sadly let down by Andromeda and its short story where himself made little appearances. Building upon this foundation, and he can be this scary, devastating boss that we feel personally rival to in the game for a maximum effect of a fitting antagonist. And this could be something certainly improved upon in the future, because let's not forget that the Archon title is not just one individual, but a name given to several Kett who are in charge of exalting new clusters of species throughout the Mass Effect universe. So what's your viewpoint about the Archon and boss battles within the game? Do you agree with my viewpoint on this? If you do, or you just in general enjoyed this video, then leaving a like would be amazing. And if you are new, don't forget to click on the subscribe box. Thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you soon in a future video. Goodbye everyone.